Hello everyone, I'm John Long and I'm a boomer. I've got 50 years of experience working with tools as a carpenter, a cabinet maker, and a contractor, and I think I know a thing or two about tools. This video is part 2 of the Masterforce 30-gallon belt drive portable air compressor. In part 1 of the video, I covered how to select an air compressor, the differences between an oil-free and a belt-driven compressor, how to refine the choices, safety, and installation. In this part, part 2, I'm going to cover startup to include break-in, operation, maintenance, what do I think, and of course, optional accessories. Before using the compressor for the first time, check to make sure that it has oil. Look at the sight glass and make sure that you can see liquid. Now this may sound simple, but it actually can be a little bit tricky. What you're looking for is to see the top of the oil somewhere in the middle of the sight glass. If there's too much oil in the reservoir, it can look like there's not enough oil, and if there's not enough oil, you won't see that line at the top of the oil either. If you have to, tip the compressor forward and back to verify you have the correct amount of oil. If you end up having to add oil, make sure you use full synthetic, non-detergent compressor oil. If you have to add oil, pour it in the oil breather fitting. And if you have to remove oil, try to suck it out from that same fitting because it's a lot less messy. Verify the compressor is positioned so that the wire cage is at least 12 inches from any wall. Verify that the off auto switch is in the off position or fully counterclockwise. Open the petcock on the bottom of the tank by turning it counterclockwise. And finally, go ahead and plug in the compressor. The compressor is now ready to start up and go through a break-in period. When you first turn on the compressor, you need to pay close attention to your electric supply. If your circuit breaker is overloaded, it's going to trip pretty much right away. Another possible problem scenario is slow starting. If the compressor isn't getting full voltage, or if the circuit breaker is overloaded, the motor may start slowly and overheat. In that case, the reset switch on the motor will pop. If it does, wait 10 or 15 minutes for the motor to cool down and then push the reset button. Another possible cause of motor overheating is using a light gauge extension cord. In any case, if you're popping the circuit breaker or the motor is starting slowly and overheating, you've got an electrical problem that needs to be taken care of. Now, leaving the petcock open, turn on the compressor by switching from off to auto. The compressor should immediately start to run, but all the air is going to bleed out through the petcock. Let the machine run for 30 minutes to go through a proper break-in period. After 30 minutes of runtime, go ahead and shut the compressor down by changing the switch from auto to off. Go ahead and shut the petcock now. The unit is now ready to place in service. And now we're going to check the compressor for correct operation. Turn the off auto switch back to the auto position and let the compressor run until the tank is full. The tank pressure gauge should read about 155 pounds. Next, using the overpressure relief valve, bleed off some of the air from the tank until the compressor switches back on. It should switch back on at about 125 pounds. Go ahead and reset the overpressure relief valve now. You may have to push the center pin down a little bit with your finger to get it to seat. If either of the readings was off by more than 10 pounds or so, repeat the test to verify whether or not you have something wrong. If there is something wrong, then you need to call the number shown in the front of your manual and talk to tech support, or else return the compressor because you probably have a bad air pressure regulator. Listen for the sound of leaking air. It's common to hear a hissing sound for a few seconds after a compressor stops running, but what you're concerned about is a continuing hiss. If you do hear something, try to isolate where the sound is coming from and then, again, call the number in the front of your manual and talk to tech support, or else return the compressor. Leaks don't just go away by themselves. For any given tool that you're going to connect, check the maximum operating pressure that should be marked on the tool. That maximum operating pressure is just that, it's maximum. That's not the actual pressure that you probably need to run the tool at. If it's marked 120 pounds, you can probably run that tool at 100 pounds without any pressure. If you exceed the 120, you're probably going to blow the seals inside the tool. Smaller tools, like brad nailers and staplers, will oftentimes have a maximum operating pressure of 100 psi, while larger tools like framing nailers will run at about 120 psi. Again, you can probably get by with 100 psi and you won't have any problems. When you want to adjust the outlet pressure on your compressor up, just go ahead and turn the pressure regulator clockwise until you reach the pressure you want. If you're going to turn the pressure down, turn it down beyond the point you're looking for and then bring it back up. Maintenance on a belt-driven compressor is pretty straightforward. The most frequent maintenance step is to drain the moisture from the tank. The instructions say to do this daily, but really that should say any day that you use the compressor a lot. You get a certain amount of moisture that condenses out of the compressed air whenever the machine is running, and you need to get it out of the tank or it'll just sit in there and rust the inside of the tank. Just open the petcock briefly until no more water spits out and then close it, and that's it. You need to periodically check the oil sight glass to make sure that you still have the correct amount of oil in the unit. And you need to blow off all the dust and grime from the compressor periodically, like once a week. According to the owner's manual, you're supposed to check the overpressure relief valve every day. I don't know anybody who does this. Check it by pulling the ring in the center of the thing until it starts to blow off air, and then release it. It should seat itself, but if it doesn't, you may have to push the center part of it with your finger. Eventually, you're going to have to adjust the tension on the drive belt. You can either wait until you hear it start to squeal every time it starts up, or you can check it. In order to correctly test the tension on the belt, what you're going to have to do is remove the shroud from around the pulleys and the belt, and then push downward on the belt with a force of 5 pounds. If the belt deflects more than ½ an inch, you need to adjust the tension. You're going to have to move the drive motor back just a little bit, but when you do it, make sure that you follow the instructions in the manual so that you get everything aligned properly when you're done. And finally, a maintenance step that's completely dependent on where and how you use the compressor. If it's being run in a place that's really clean, you don't have to pay too much attention to the air filters. If it's being used in a dusty area, you're going to have to check the filters and clean or replace them periodically. Paint in the air is especially bad because it'll just plain clog the filters and then you'll have to replace them. Just remove the cap on each filter holder to get access to the filter itself. Remove the filter and then either clean it or replace it. Just turn the cap on the filter holder about 1/4 of an inch counterclockwise to pop it off and get access to the filters. In any case, it's a good idea to pull the filters every 3 months or so and check them. I have to say that I'm pretty big on machine maintenance. I like to make up a chart for each machine that shows the maintenance steps and the frequency that they should be done. There's a space to record problems noticed and a space for parts that needed to be replaced. And then I put the chart together with the owner's manual with the machine. And now, what do I think about this compressor? I'm convinced it's an excellent machine that will serve very well for any conscientious user. I've had mine for about 2 years now, and I haven't had a speck of trouble with it. There are a couple of things about this machine that bother me, but I knew about them before I bought it. It only has one air outlet, where most machines have 2. I bought a manifold so that I could plug in up to 3 air hoses at one time. But then I realized that tripping over the hoses all the time was worse than the alternative. So then I bought a retracting hose reel and problem was solved. I also don't like the petcock on the bottom of the tank because it's a nuisance to use. So somewhere along the line I'm going to replace the petcock with a ball valve on a long nipple. That'll make it easier to work with. And this might seem like a really minor issue, but I don't like the standard coupler that was put on the outlet of this thing. When you're using a 50-foot long 3/8 inch diameter hose, you need to keep the pressure as constant as possible in the hose. I ended up buying a high flow coupler plug kit and installing that. You'll notice that I said this is an excellent machine for any conscientious user. I was in Menards the other day and I saw a contractor's employee trying to return an identical machine. It was just beat to hell, had mud splattered on it, and looked like it had been dragged through a cow pasture. If you don't select the right machine and then take care of it, then no machine is going to work out for you. I think my favorite accessory for this compressor has been the retracting air hose reel. It's completely eliminated the problem of having air hoses underfoot all the time. For more information, take a look at my video, Masterforce Hose Reel. Second would be the high flow coupler plug kit. I may be fooling myself here because the regulator itself may be more of a restriction in the airline, but it is important to try to reduce all of the restrictions. I installed one high flow coupler plug on the outlet to the compressor, and then I used standard coupler plugs for the rest of the unit. One of the most commonly used accessories is an air blowgun. Masterforce puts out a very nice high volume air blowgun with a trigger control to regulate the amount of air. You may want to add an inline air shutoff. You can use a 3/8 inch ball valve for this, preferably installed just in front of the water separator if you use one. If you're going to be spraying finishes with this compressor, you may want to add a combination water separator and air filter. Masterforce makes 3 different models, so you're going to have to check your airflow and volume requirements to get the right one. Menards has a variety of air hoses available, both heavy-duty rubber and polymer. The polymer hoses weigh about the same as the rubber hoses, but they are more flexible, and as a result they tend to kink more. I end up recommending the use of the heavy-duty rubber hose coupled with a flexible whip. The whip has a swivel fitting on the end, which just makes using the tool a lot easier. And that's it for part 2 of this video. If you found this video to be interesting or helpful, don't forget the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching. And that, my friends, is another thing or two about the Masterforce 30-gallon belt-driven portable air compressor. For everyone who has watched both parts 1 and 2 and stayed awake and hasn't spilled their bowl of Fruit Loops, I salute you. Good day.